welcome to Joe Closeit. My name is Joe Sheehan, and I brought back my good friend Tim Pearson from North Dakota Guarantee and Title, and he's going to help give us a few tips on closings to make sure that your closings go smooth, especially regarding the money that you bring to closing. Now, North Dakota recently had a change in the law, but a lot of states have this kind of a law in the books. So even if you're not in North Dakota, this is going to be really helpful advice. So number one, Tim, tell us, if you have a closing coming up, you got to get money for your closing.
Yep.
Give us the things you need to do as a buyer to make sure your closing goes smooth.
Make sure, first of all, that if you have a check, you've got to get it into the title company at least 3 days in advance. Funds got to be there. We've got to put it into the bank. They have to clear.
Even if it's a cashier's check?
Even if it's a cashier's check.
Can I just write a personal check to the title company then?
You can, but again, it has to clear.
If you're bringing money via check, get it to your title company at least 3 days in advance. Another way you can get the money to the closing agency is wire.
Is by a wire.
And give your best advice on a wire.
Well, a wire, you want to make sure that you give a couple of hours to allow it to initiate and then to hit the accounts. So for example, if we're going to have a closing like at 4 o'clock, you don't want a person trying to wire at 3.
No,
it may not make it.
So you're depending on the government here, folks.
Yeah, and the wire system, and we have no control over that.
Right.
So make sure that if you're going to have a closing in the afternoon, try to get the money wired. You can do it the same day, but do it in the morning. Yep. If you're going to have a closing, say tomorrow morning, initiate the wire this afternoon, like 2 o'clock or something.
It's a good idea to send that wire out a day in advance, just to give yourself some time in case there's any issues.
Yeah, you know? Or at least give yourself about 4 or 5 hours.
Last question I get all the time. Is there ever a circumstance you can bring a check to the closing if you're the buyer?
You can. The law actually allows up to a $10,000 aggregate amount that somebody can bring in with a check, and that's considered good funds at the closing.
Okay, so I as a buyer can bring a check if it's just under $10,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You can bring
it
in.
What if the seller's got to bring money too?
No, it's an aggregate amount.
So a total amount.
Yeah.
So hey, before you ever do that, just so you avoid the closing nightmare, make sure you've checked with your loan officer and your realtor, and make sure they've checked with the title company to make sure that the total amount of checks aren't going to close over that $10,000. So if there was an emergency and you needed to bring a $2,000 cashier's check to the closing as a buyer, that would be possible. Just make sure you check to make sure you're not over that $10,000 aggregate, and it's confusing enough that you make sure you check.
And the last one for realtors here in North Dakota, a real estate company can cut a check up to $3,000 for earnest money, and they can bring that to the closing. Okay. Now, there's been a little bit of confusion about that. If it's above that, what they should do is the real estate company should initiate one of those wires and transfer it to us. They can do that on the day of closing too, just like any regular person would.
Right, and the other exception is title companies will accept each other's checks.
That is true.
So, so sometimes I get the question, well, I'm selling my house over at this title company, now I need to get the money over to this title company same day. If it's local, the title companies accept each other's checks.
That's correct.
So you don't have to worry about that. If it's an out-of-town closing, wire the money is the best.
Wire the money is the best.
So if you're closing to Minnesota and then going to North Dakota, just have the Minnesota company wire the money. It's the best practice. So hey, thank you for tuning in to Joe Closeit. Hope this helps. If you know a friend who's closing on a house, forward this video to them. Share it with your friends and make sure they don't wind up with a closing nightmare and they get Tim's good advice. If you like these videos, make sure you subscribe. Go to the link here below. And if you have questions, you can always contact or email me. I'll bring experts like Tim in here to answer your questions. Say goodbye, Tim.
See you later. Thanks.
Could have said goodbye, Tim.
Goodbye, Tim.